Welcome to the Build with Boundaries podcast. My name is Mahnaz, and this podcast is for mums who want to carve out time so that you can work in ways that work for you, your life, your family, and of course your business. Together, we will discover why you are not prioritising your business and the actions that you can take so you can live an intentional, productive, and fulfilled life without mum guilt. So let's dive in to today's episode.
Welcome everyone, and I have Sarah Evans here as my guest, and this is part 2 of our podcast recording. We did a Sarah Meet Her Human Design a few weeks ago, and now we are back. And this time we are talking more about Sarah's human design because now she's had a chance to really absorb the information and a lot of information she didn't get until after the podcast interview. So therefore, it was quite difficult and tricky to share with you just how powerful human design is. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you for being here. Would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love that it's part 2. So we go a lot deeper. And I'm a coach and mentor who specialises in using core values to help clients build their resilience, their self-leadership skills, and working with leaders and people in lots of different industries. But the importance of core values is something that I recognise really quickly. So it's really interesting to see how that shows up in human design as well.
Absolutely. And we will definitely be talking about that some more. So as part of your reading, Sarah, you got a document and you've got lots of other resources and videos to explain to you what your human design is. So first thing, I'll just start by saying that Sarah is a generator and her profile is a 1-4. For those who understand human design, that will mean something to them. And for those who don't, they'll be like, what on earth is this? So there's so many different elements to human design, and each of them gives us clues into what works best for you, what your strengths are, how you operate best. And the type is, there are not many types. So you are a generator, you are the builder and the doer. What I would like to start with is even just with these kind of high level information of human design. How have you found this, like looking at yourself from a reading? It's quite strange to look at yourself and read about yourself in a PDF document, but what was your first impressions when you got this information through?
I think what I loved about it is that it confirmed what I'm doing and the work that I'm doing and the reasons why. So, making that shift from working as an employee for the people and setting up your own business and kind of trying to help other people. The things that came through, like being a generator, that you're builders and creators, the fascination with learning and constantly wanting to learn, but also help others learn as well. And they were things that absolutely came through in my core values as important. So one of my values is growth. Another one is purpose, that I need to, if I feel that I'm not growing, i.e. learning or helping others to do that, then I don't feel right. And so those things were really evident, and so I felt there was a real comfort in seeing that I was absolutely on the right track. It certainly didn't throw up anything horrible, thinking I'm really on the wrong track. This isn't going to work. It gave me that confidence.
Yeah. And having confirmation is so powerful because sometimes, even though we know it, we need to hear it in multiple ways and again in different ways until it really sits with us. So that's wonderful. And yeah, definitely. You have a 1 in your profile and I have a 1 too. So this kind of thirst for knowledge, it explains a lot of things. I know for myself, that's always helpful to understand that that's actually how you operate best. It makes sense. You don't blame yourself for things. So moving on to, because what I want to do with the human design reading is always making it practical, because if it's not practical, then it's just a piece of paper that says stuff about you. But what I did was I cover in quite a lot of detail certain areas that you can think about and reflect on? And obviously you need a bit of time to absorb all of this. So things like decision making is a big one. Everybody has their own way that they are best at making their decisions, and they can learn this through their human design. And when you learn this, what I'd love to know is, what did you see, Sarah? Was there any kind of patterns that either going back to your past or perhaps currently how you make decisions? Was it helpful to see that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think around decision making, I know I recognize that I'm a kind of emotional, what they call it, an emotional buyer. I will react quite quickly and think, I feel like on an intuitive level that I want this. Things to do with learning and growth, not necessarily, just kind of buy something from Amazon. But, and I suppose that, that kind of really came up. And I think, again, in sourcing a business, you're and it's really common for people to, you don't know what you don't know, but you need to know a lot. And so you sign up for courses, you sign up for trainings, you sign up for lots of things. And I've spent way too much money on stuff that I didn't need to spend money on. And I'm a lot more careful now. But I think, I guess maybe knowing and being aware of that a couple of years ago might have saved me some money. I don't know. But it's, so that's something that I really recognize. And it's interesting to know that is in me, so I have to be aware of that. So that's one particular thing around decision making that came up.
That makes complete sense. And I think understanding how you make the decisions and what you might be inclined to make decisions for, it helps us to understand. And we kind of, again, go back to that blaming thing, can always feel guilty and bad about things. But when we understand, how we can make the decisions better and what's happened in the past, that helps us to understand what's happened before, therefore how we can do this better in the future. And that's the whole point, is personal development. And human design is another tool for us to develop ourselves, right? Live in our potential, be the most efficient we could be. And what it highlights also is a lot of strengths and weaknesses. So when I say strengths and weaknesses, I don't mean you have them both. They are a scale and you could be anywhere in the middle. And I think being aware of where you are on that scale is really powerful, because sometimes we don't see that we are naturally gifted in something. And for us to move to that, we have to let go of something. We have to stop doing the thing that's making us fall into the trap or into the almost shadow side, as we call it in human design. So are there things there that were really helpful, knowing like what your gifts are? Like, there are key areas and elements that I've highlighted that are really your strengths, that you have this natural ability. That's what our gift is, that you have this natural ability because you have got this experience since day zero, like it's been inherently in you. So you've been practicing it in your life, whether you knew it consciously or not. And so tell us more about how you see that and what you found with that kind of scale of something being very positive or potentially not so positive.
Yeah, I mean, I think this came through in the section around the channels in particular, which was interesting. Again, for people that don't know human design at all, which I didn't. The channels are, those kind of, they connect the different centers in our body, in our system. And so going through those, I thought I could do it with like a tick list. I was like, yes, I recognize that. I recognize that. In things like, the channel of structuring, and me, the ability to structure and express insights in that way goes right back to, school, everything I can remember. And I often say to people, like I always doodle in a box. So I love to kind of, I love to doodle, but I will always put a box around it of some sort. Well, it's kind of like, for me, I think when you've got that structure, but that you've then got absolute freedom inside it to be creative. And actually all the jobs I've ever done, all the work that I've done, which was very much, around creating stories and scripts, a screenplay has a very specific structure. But once you get that structure right within it, obviously you can do anything and you can create amazing things. But you have to have that structure in place. And I was always, I would work with people who didn't follow structure first, did the ideas first, and then created the structure. And I was very good at help, which was why I loved working as a script editor and producer, because I really enjoyed that process of taking ideas and putting the box around them, basically making it kind of work in a structure. So that was something and I can see that in my business as well.
It's the way you work best. I mean, that is obviously part of you, and that's the way you work best. And the fact that comes through as a real strength, an area that you have practiced, and you've just been able to recall memories, experiences, jobs, all these things. I think that is what's most powerful about human design, is that we actually go back and realize why we found things easier, why we found things enjoyable, why we maybe didn't think we were an expert in them, but other people would have around us. And it's not until we see that actually we are gifted in this, that we can actually truly say, this is a strength. Like, I have this strength. And I think that is really important, to be able to say that you can acknowledge what your strengths are, because we can often not see those things ourselves, can we?
Right. And actually, interestingly, I've kind of ignored that. So I read a little bit in terms of building a business, which is really interesting. Obviously, there were so many things to do and it can feel quite chaotic. And I've sort of run with that, but I don't like it. And so I think looking at this again and thinking about, what I need to feel on top of my business and more in control, is creating more of a structure, a loose structure. It's not rigid, but it just gives you the guidelines that then you can be creative and connect and do all the things that you love doing within it. So that kind of really chimed as well in terms of my day.
I love that, because that's something you can carry forward. So that's like, what can you do now? And how can you lean into your strengths more? What is going to help you to flourish more? That is the whole point of human design, is for us to be able to lean into our gifts and our strengths more. And if we don't actually notice them, or even like properly acknowledge them, we're very far away from accepting them as our own, because we don't even see them. And I think there's layers of this. So that's really helpful for others to see how this can play out, because it's so powerful. It can help us understand what's happened in the past. It can also start becoming a bit of a guide of, well, how can I have more of that? Because obviously, if I'm natural ability to do this, then you want to be doing more of that. And then maybe just noticing the signs when you are venturing into areas that are not, in human design, it's called not self theme. As you're a generator, when you feel that frustration, like, that is your sign of knowing something's not right, and being able to listen to that and actually waiting to notice it, actually being on your radar, that this is something I want to watch out for. I think that can also help us. And you've got a lot of intuitive abilities, which came through in your chart too, which is obviously in your design and with the words that you use and how you share the love of your words, and being able to actually connect the real meaning behind the word. It's not just about that superficial. I thought that kind of intuitive business and how you'd set it up was really powerful as well.
Yeah. And also the whole idea of coaching, because I've done that over many years in different forms. But now, and one of the things that I always used to say, and I'd have like little stickers on the computer, was the unexamined life is not worth living, from Socrates. Great quote. And I remember, people, I'd be like family members or something, would kind of laugh at me like, oh, you've got to question everything. You've got to always go deeper. And that's, that is kind of who I am. But the benefit of that is that for clients, wanting to work with people and help them, you see, you want to find the solution. You want to help, you want to listen to them, but you want to kind of help them get to the solution because you're curious and you want to examine things. And that, in terms of coaching, I think that's why I love one-to-one coaching so much in particular, because you go into those details with people.
Yeah, it's the depth, isn't it? So let's move on to the centers then. So if anybody who is familiar with human design, it's the shapes that are in your chart. And if you're not familiar, they look similar to the chakra system, except you have more of them, and they're energy centers. So you can have these open, or they can be open, which is undefined, or they can be defined, which means they're colored in. Now, what I mention in your PDF and share this with you in your reading is focusing on the open centers, so the ones that are white and they are undefined, because wherever we have these open centers, we actually absorb energy. So we're taking that in from around us. So they are actually very, very powerful, even though we think, well, it's just white. They just know like there's nothing on them. The reason they are so powerful is the energy that we might feel in those centers can actually be amplified. So when we absorb the energy from somebody else around us, or, whatever situation we're in, when that energy is amplified, it is going to give you quite a big change in energy in the center, rather than it being somebody who's defined. It actually means it's quite consistent. So, they don't really have an up and down as such. And what's really interesting is when I share and I create everybody's charts, I love looking at this section because I think it's so powerful to be able to share where somebody is open and give them practical ways to look at and asking questions or things that they can watch out for, depending on obviously what centers are open, to help them to connect, like, is this happening to me? Because what that means is if you have an open center and it's really amplifying the energy, it could be that you're falling into this kind of negative state. And by answering and watching out for these, you can almost bring yourself back and notice it and realign yourself. And the list that I give you gives you enough to have fairly instant insights, because you're going to right away be able to recollect whether this is something that happens to you or has never happened to you, for example. So would you love to share what your thoughts were when you were reading this section in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. This was really fascinating for me, because once I kind of got my head around the fact that the open, in my head, I kind of simplified it as thinking, the kind of, I know they're not empty, but I was sort of thinking in terms of energy potential, that, you draw in those things from other people or from other situations. So, absolutely, resonated with head, getting caught up in thoughts and things that don't matter. But also, if you go too far down that path, the danger is then that you become overwhelmed and you rely too much on what other people think or what they, what they think about things, rather than sitting and relying on yourself and your own intuition. And then that showed up with the heart, sort of that need to kind of prove your worthiness, sometimes, which I think is really interesting in the fact that that's related to the will or ego, that it, it's an inconsistent source of willpower, which really makes sense to me, because willpower is not my strong. If you can recognize and discern what's really valuable. And I think as well, that's why I can pick up so quickly when somebody else is not acting with integrity. Like that's, honesty and integrity are really core to me. So I immediately feel that energetically if someone else.
Wow. And it is so important in your work, Sarah. That's wonderful. I love your explanation. And I think it is that, like, being able to not just read this thing, but actually, how does it affect me and how is it happening to me, and really applying that. So I think I've got a last question for you. Through this human design work, do you feel, because it's all about understanding yourself better and really seeing yourself through a different lens, almost like putting a different lens on and just saying, well, what do other people see? We don't really see ourselves in the same way as others do. And there are some things that others will see way before we ever acknowledge it. So do you think this human design piece has helped to give you permission to be more you, like as in truly your unique self? Because every part of this is just a little jigsaw piece giving you different flavors of what your gifts are, and putting them all together is very unique for every single individual. So do you have permission to be more you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's something that, there is a lot of information, and it's something that I know I will come back to again and again. But certainly that confirmation of who you are and your strength, like you say, we don't listen when other people tell us these things. And I think seeing it here, and it's from that sort of partly scientific basis, really, really underlines the strength that you've got, the things that are at your heart and are important to you, and absolutely kind of gives you that permission to sort of be who you are and move forward on the path that is right for you, and know that it's right for you.
Absolutely. Perfect. And I think you make a great point of, there is a lot of information there. It's not something that you have to deal with everything. There are certain elements that you have to work on first, but having access to this information means that you can keep on listening as you go through different challenges. Maybe, every 6 months you re-listen to your reading, you will hear different things. And this has been really exciting for me as well, because I think it is powerful and our perspective keeps on changing too. So if you have enjoyed this listen and you'd love to understand more about the work that Sarah and I do together in the Harmony Quest, then please do head on over to buildwithboundaries.com/values meets boundaries. It's a video series that we did together, and we discussed how values are also another way of recognizing who we are and being able to embody that. And human design just adds this extra layer, which is actually hugely transformational, because again, it gives us clues to how we work best. So thank you so much for being here, Sarah, and thank you for sharing. Do you have any last words to share with everybody who's listening?
Just to say, thanks for the opportunity really to get this information about myself and to go into this depth. I think it's really, really fascinating. So I'm intrigued to kind of learn more and find out more as time goes on.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great to see that when you know somebody and then you do their chart, it's really powerful. You start seeing them in the chart, and that's really, really fascinating for me as well. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.